All right, today in cultural Bolshevism, Denzel Washington will star as Hannibal Barca, the man who attacked Rome, a top elephant, in a film by the guy who did Training Day, which I thought was pretty overrated. It was just so unrealistic in the portrayal. But people are so dumbed down, and that was like 20 plus years ago. But people are so dumbed down now they don't people just don't read anymore. They just watch movies and they don't realize how upside down movies are. I mean, one of the best recent examples is the Dahomey tribe movie based on the Dahomey tribe and the English and the French trying to stop slavery, called The Woman King. And people watch movies and think, oh, well, it's based on history. It's going to be fairly accurate. They really think that. They don't know how subverted and corrupt Hollywood is. So they watch this movie and they go, oh, the French and African the French and English are trying to enslave these people, and the Dahomey tribe's trying to. No, actually, it's based on history. Those are real countries and tribes, but it's actually 180 degrees inverted. And people don't understand that until you show them the facts of it, and then it blows their mind. They go, wait, why would Hollywood do something like that, like completely invert it, just to shift all your focus and hatred on the French and the English away from the Dahomey tribe, who was actually enslaving other people of that region, but they weren't their tribes, so they didn't care about it. I mean, it was a very bloodthirsty tribe. There's writings of the time period, like one of the women, she got back a prisoner of war or something, and she cuts his head off and licks the blood off of her knife. And the guy's writing this down and describing, how the tribe behaved. And it's like, that was just accepted practice. You just got to lean into it. But when they make the movie, they make the English and the French the bad guys who were trying to stop slavery. And go, why do they do that? Well, because they're anti-white globalists. And you look at Hollywood and you realize, oh, this has been going on for a long time. It's been going on since about post World War II, when they really kind of pulled the mask off. So Hannibal, Denzel style, in a Netflix show, well, nobody will watch. Now here's the thing, the difference between streaming shows and big screen shows, where you have very clear profits and losses. Everybody can see if a movie's underperforming. But a streaming show is different because you're trying to get a monthly subscription out of people, and you just have to have stuff on your library where you show people, okay, this is worth subscribing for $15, $20 a month, and we have all these thousands of shows and a bunch of these original shows, and it's quantity, not quality. So they see these kind of shows on the wall and they go, okay, there's so much out there, it's worth $15 a month in their mind, and it doesn't matter that it's garbage like Cuties or like this. And people are, unfortunately, really dumb nowadays because they don't read at all anymore. Social media really killed reading, which honestly I think is, if one thing would kill a country, it would be that if you take reading away from people, the information density available on books just cannot be equaled digitally. It's just a whole different experience. And if people don't know history, then they're doomed to repeat it, because the people who control the narrative control the history, and the people who run Netflix control the narrative. And there's too many millions of people who watch Netflix and movies, and they think it's somewhat based in reality, because they're dumb people, but they're naive people, and they've been whole lives, but they've been taught what to think by these globalist schools and media, and people are not taught how to think anymore. And that's been going on for a long time. There's another guy who's got this theory. He says, talks about people were not meant to watch movies, not meant to have 90 minutes of images and music and audio, essentially reprogramming their brain, and it's controlled by, anyone can make anything they want, and it's everything's fiction, everything's propaganda from someone's perspective. Anyway, so Denzel Washington at 68 is going to play the 29-year-old red-haired, green-eyed. He was described that way by an Islamic scholar who was studying him, Hannibal, in the Netflix Cancer Cast piece of bullshit globalist propaganda, because this is the stage of Weimar where anything goes. If they think they can make a movie that subverts and corrupts, they will. And usually they try to focus in on subverting and corrupting people of European descent. But as you saw with the Cleopatra movie, what was that, Macedonian and Greeks, and modern Egyptians now were very upset congratulations, we upset. I think that was Netflix too, where you upset a whole country. Good job there with your just insane propaganda. They will rewrite and blackwash anything and everything, and I know there's like two black listeners here, but it's not a compliment when they're doing it to you because they're using you as pawns, where you take the slings and arrows, but they're the ones moving you around the board, and they don't get the light doesn't shine on them; it reflects on you. And on us, we're pawns too. It's just pawns being manipulated by these chess players. So Robert Seffer chimes in on Twitter that Hannibal was Phoenician, which is genetically closer to modern Europeans, not sub-Saharans. And the word Europe itself comes from Europa, a Phoenician princess. And then he points out that modern Lebanese Phoenicians, because I don't want to scroll down to reveal this image because it's got the windmill of peace on it, which is obviously an ancient symbol, but Google is not so cool on algorithmically picking that up and removing your advertiser revenue from that. So this Lebanese guy pops in there, and he's Lebanese, pretty fair skinned, but Robert points out that modern Lebanese Phoenicians have an 8% admixture of sub-Saharan DNA after the Roman period 2,000 years ago, and that ancient Phoenicians were even more fair. So the whole region was much more green and blue-eyed and blonde and red-haired from that region. And people think, they look at it now and they think, oh, this is what it looked like back then. It's like, no, entire groups of people change. And you look at the level of development and what people were doing, and you go, well, does that remind you of more European history, or does that remind you of these other groups? And you go, how dare you say that? What the truth in history is somehow istophobic now? Yeah, the thing is, to a lot of these people, it is. It really is. To the point where you can't have conversation with people who are so brainwashed. And you go, how do you know what you know? And they go, oh, and if they're honest, they go, oh, I learned it from Hollywood, or I learned it from a globalist brainwashed government teacher who learned it from Hollywood, or learned it from very bad people who are pushing this kind of narrative. And there's so many people who know what they know because they know it from Hollywood. And you go, you don't know anything. You know what the narrative is. And go, what have you read? And they haven't read anything about it. It's all Hollywood. And think, oh, well, Hollywood's pretty close. I mean, they wouldn't just totally invert something. And then you point out the movies where they did just that. They just, everything is 180 degrees. I mean, Sinister versus Dexterous, this left-hand inverted path, where the French and the English are the bad guys because they want to make the homie tribe the good guys. You're like, but that's the opposite of history. Why would people be this evil? I don't know. You have to ask the people who made the Woman King. And then he points out that there were blue-eyed people in Israel who came to Israel 6,500 years ago from Iran, which means there was blue-eyed people back then. The whole region was much more fair skinned back then. And oddly enough, they have been disappearing from that region as is happening in Europe, America, and Canada now, which is just a conspiracy theory. It's like nobody learns from history because they're not taught history, because the government controls a lot of the schools, and media controls, media is controlled by globalists who make this kind of rewriting of history. And there's a ton of people who will watch these movies and they really think that this is their basis of history, where Cleopatra was a sub-Saharan, or Hannibal was a sub-Saharan, or Peter Pan, what do you mean it wasn't Indian? It's like, no, dude, this is all globalist blackwashing or anti-white propaganda. Even when it's not exactly anti-white, it's still light versus dark, and that's what Hollywood will. I mean, if Hollywood is at the stage, if they made a movie called Cuties, I can't Fed post here. You should not be supporting Hollywood. Hollywood should be known as, like, people who watch Hollywood should be like looked down upon. Like, people talk about sports ball now. If you're on the right, it's and not only are you looked down upon, I mean, you're openly insulted if you're somebody who's in the right alternative sphere, and you're talking about, you dare to mention sports ball or something, because people know that, like, in this culture war, that's over, as well as the Hollywood bread and circuses are over. Anyway, so Denzel Washington is making this movie for Netflix that nobody's going to watch, and then when it gets out there, and people go, this is developmentally disabled levels of globalist propaganda, then they'll just call everyone istophobic. Like the Marvels that cost $275 million, without the tax credit, and then the advertising for it. And they go, well, yeah, but it was Nia DaCosta, it was a black woman director. Yeah, but the movie bombed. Like I was looking at it yesterday. I thought, oh yeah, it's probably going to break even over a long enough time period. Now people are looking at projections, going, like, it's not even going to break even. I go, yeah, but she's a black director and she's involved with this, $350 million movie. Yeah, but she did a bad job. Yeah, but she's a POC, WOC, person of color and woman of color. Yeah, but she did a bad job. You're not complimenting her by bringing attention to the fact, like, did she get that position only because she was an affirmative action hire? Well, yeah, of course. She's black. Perhaps you didn't hear that when I said she's black. We can put her face out there. But the movie was crap and it lost money. It doesn't matter to these people. The truth doesn't matter to these people. In fact, if you say the truth, they'll attack you as istophobic because they don't want to know the truth. I mean, honestly, we are in just, I say we're headed towards dark days. We're in them. We're in the early stages of them, and it's just going to get worse. It's the soft man, create very hard times stage of history now. But they're rewriting history now with these movies, and the population is so dumbed down and low IQ and naive that their worldview is shaped by Hollywood, and Hollywood is controlled by these globalist parasites who are making everyone black and removing any accomplishments of Europeans who were probably the most accomplished. I mean, it's hard to rate accomplishments, but they were very, very, very well up there. And in this case, even if they're not Europeans, but they're, the guy was thought to have red hair and green eyes. It's like, what would you call that at the time period? Not European, white-ish. You know what I'm saying? It's like if they have fair features, they try to erase it to the point of having sub-Saharan African. Like, this just is not what the sub-Saharans did. They had their own culture. It was much simpler. And when you say that to people, they lose their mind. You go, like, they were adapted to their environment like other people were adapted to their environment. One is not better than the other any more than a coyote is better than a wolf. They're just adapted for different environments. And people lose their mind because they have these projections they have to overlay over things because their whole worldview is shaped by Hollywood. If you start to wash off that Hollywood propaganda, the brainwashing, it might, like, you almost have to be a little bit on the spectrum to look at things and just not have that political correctness filter. But that's kind of another kind of video on human psychology. I was thinking about that the other day, about people who, if you're in a position like a job or a financial position where you can't get canceled, you're much freer to speak than people who are subject to social media cancellation on Black Twitter or by globalist media. And I was thinking as I was walking, you can look at people and talk to people, and you immediately can categorize people who are in different positions, people who are cancel proof, and people who are in this network where they have to be very careful and watch their words. Like in Cuba, if you wanted to talk about Fidel Castro, you just touch your chin and stroke your chin to mimic a beard. And the same kind of stuff was happening in Russia, where you had to, look around, be very careful who you spoke to about things. And most times it was just self-censorship. You just didn't talk about things because you just didn't want to disappear or you get punished in some way. So, but like, you spoke through facial expressions, so nobody could testify against you and get that knock on the door. And the same thing is happening now in America, because you can at least financially get canceled for almost anything. But there's a different class of people who, because of their different positions, they own their own business, work for themselves, they have a client list that it's just almost impossible to cancel them. It would just be so difficult. They're free to speak these kind of things, and you know that when you talk to people. It's like, yeah, that's not a good society where you don't have free speech anymore, because that means bad things can propagate, and there's no correction, societal level correction, because of social media can destroy people's lives. So people just don't speak on these things. Anyway, I realize that was all over the place. Some topics are difficult for YouTube. Maybe I should just do this a 4 minute video for YouTube or something. I mean, because like, what do you say about this? Denzel Washington is making some globalist propaganda piece. Is it blackwashing a white character? It's like it's not really a white character, even if he might have had red hair and green eyes. It's he was what he was. Um, but I mean, it's very clearly globalist propaganda. It's part of the humiliation ritual for a conquered people. And it's weird how much they try to get away with without awakening the cattle. And will they awake? I don't know. But this Robert Seffer character, he's interesting because he's a anthropologist, I think, or some kind of historian. He's just getting this stuff is driving him crazy, and he will do Twitter Spaces. If you're on Twitter and you have some following and you want to talk about cultural Bolshevism or anthropology, this kind of stuff, he'll probably join you on a Twitter Space. The guy loves to be the kind of the center of attention. I don't mean that in a bad way. He really knows his stuff, and he's a good speaker. He's got a YouTube channel. I think it's pretty big too. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys all next episode.